From flaming kicks to giant fists from the sky that can knock you out in one punch, these are the most powerful one-hit KO moves. Starting our list, we have Enel's Raigo. Perhaps one of the earliest displays of what a super weapon could be, Enel is capable of massive lightning strikes and can evaporate islands easily. So imagine how much power his signature move can have. To do this move, Enel has to channel his devil fruit powers with Enel's giant arc, the Arc Maxim, to create a thundercloud, big enough to finish off most enemies in the blink of an eye. I guess the Straw Hats were lucky that Luffy was a direct counter to Enel's lightning, huh? If you thought lightning was devastating, wait till you hear about how our next entry melts through an entire iceberg instantly. Akainu is widely considered to be the strongest marine currently, and that's a huge accomplishment when you factor in monsters like Sengoku and Garp. And while his devil fruit ability helps him a lot in this regard, it's knowing how to take full advantage of magma that sets him apart from other horrible Logia users like Caribou. Understanding how easily everything melts when it comes into contact with Akainu's body, his signature move doesn't wait for his opponents to come close to him. Akainu's Daifunka is a huge attack in which he creates a huge magma fist. Think of an oversized rocket that can explode on impact, causing volcanic rock to scatter after the initial hit. If it wasn't bad enough that you got hit with a gigantic fist made of literal magma, you gotta deal with the little meteors that come after said hit. And if you thought the current Fleet Admiral had some hot moves, our next entry defines the position of Fleet Admiral by setting the standard of power in the Navy. You don't get to the top of the Marines just by pushing paperwork, and Sengoku the Buddha was definitely powerful. While he's generally known for his tactical prowess, he's one of the most powerful hand-to-hand combatants in the One Piece world. In fact, in Marineford, he was the only person capable of holding down an enraged Garp from killing Akainu on the spot. That said, he can also rely on his devil fruit power to greatly enhance his fighting ability. With extreme speed and his giant Buddha form, he quickly wiped out the Blackbeard pirates with his Buddha Palm attack. The force between Sengoku's Buddha Palm is so strong that an indirect attack is strong enough to collapse the execution platform in Marineford, despite being cushioned by Luffy's Gear 3 and Mr. 3's Candle Wall. Sengoku is one boss I'd rather not have. If you think Luffy felt that attack, wait till you hear about how he got walloped by our next entry. The New World's pirates are the peak of the world of piracy, and not a lot can match the raw physical strength, haki, and devil fruit mastery of Charlotte Katakuri. When we first saw Katakuri, his main appeal was the advanced observation haki that he possessed, but when you get past that, you get to see why his billion berry bounty is well earned. If you thought getting slapped by Mochi wasn't threatening, imagine having it coated with haki and coming at you fast and hard. Katakuri's buzz cut Mochi is a ball of spikes coated in haki that knocked the lights out of Luffy. Not only was it hard, but it also helped that it was sticky with Luffy stuck on the Mochi for the first part of the attack until Katakuri slammed him into the ground. Considering Katakuri's signature move was pretty much something you'd see in a food fight, it's impressive that the haki he possessed was so strong that it allowed him to beat down Luffy with dessert food. Having a bounty in the billions, Katakuri wasn't going to play around when it comes to family matters. And speaking of powerful leaders in an emperor's crew, our next entry even managed to permanently scar a future emperor. Kozuki Oden was a huge guy and had a good handle on his swords, Enma and the Ami no Habakiri. Because of Oden's natural ability to fight, he didn't have any issues greeting Whitebeard with clashing steel. Of course, Whitebeard being Whitebeard, he had to knock some sense into Oden before eventually making him his 1st Division commander. Fast forward some odd years later, and Oden came back to the land of Wano, only to find that Kaido and Orochi had taken over. Deciding to take matters into his own hands, Wano's samurai took up arms, and during the fight, Oden was one of the only people that ended up wounding Kaido. Kaido's near-invincible body was no match for Oden's strongest move, the Togen Tutsuka, a powerful cross-slash that scarred Kaido for decades. With powerful haki and 2 of the best swords in existence at the time, Oden was strong enough to leave a lasting impression on Kaido. So if you thought sword slashes were effective in One Piece, wait till you hear about our next entry that uses entire blocks of steel to beat down an emperor in Wano. You take one look at Eustace Kid and you already know that he's a violent and easily pissed off individual. One of the very first encounters with him was way back in Sabaody when he was a part of a huge fight involving all the supernovas when Luffy decided to give St. Charlos a knockout punch he very much deserved. And then we fast forward to Wano, and he's still the brash punk that tries to pick a fight with anyone despite losing an entire arm. This is reflected in his fighting style too, with his devil fruit ability to control metal. Kid loves to manipulate metal and to use gauntlets, guns, or even mech suits to his advantage, but none of those compare to his signature move, Damned Punk. Getting hit by metal multiple times times is already painful enough. Imagine getting shot with a laser bigger than Kid himself. While it took an assist from Law to land, Damned Punk was enough to drive Big Mom down from Kaido's castle in the sky and past the Earth's crust. And to think Kid built it with scraps he found walking around Kaido's castle. Of course, Kid wasn't the only one who put the beating on the Big Mom. Our next entry had a fairly strong contribution to the fight too. Trafalgar Law has always been one of the most single popular characters in One Piece, and for good reason. The dude's strong without needing to put in too much effort, and the amount of things you can do with the upper fruit that allows Law to fight in crazy creative ways. Creating an operating room while being able to slice anything within that area is probably the most single overpowered devil fruit in the entire show, and we're not even talking about the awakened abilities yet. While Law has several unnamed attacks that do considerable amounts of damage, it's his Puncture Willy that takes the top spot in his arsenal. After all, if the dude can puncture Big Mom and fry her from within, there's likely not a lot of attacks that can beat that. The move does have its downsides though. Law needs to stay on the target while the sword goes down into the earth to actually deal damage. However, with how fast Law was able to do it, and considering that the earth is hypothesized to be 3 to 4 times larger than the earth that we live on, also the fact that he stayed on Big Mom while eating hockey-infused punches, yeah, it's safe to say that this fight was the fight that made people think he deserved his bounty. The Supernovas are a wild bunch of pirates to topple the 4 emperors. However, they didn't have a hard time for nothing, and our next entry literally uses people's fear to her advantage. With the Soul Fruit, Big Mom was a menace, with everything around her becoming a living thing. Even her weapons talk to her during battle, which plays to her advantage since they are fiercely loyal and add to the number of things you gotta worry about when fighting her. And with her large frame, one would think that she's actually a giant, but that's far from the case, with one of her first casualties being one of the leaders of Elbaf, Jorel, just because she got cravings. But perhaps one of the biggest disrespects towards the giants would be Big Mom's signature attack, Ikoku Sovereignty. This attack was originally sown way back in Little Garden by the giants, Dory and Brogy. Having a move of this caliber is enough for the pirate world to take Big Mom seriously. When Big Mom used it in Wano, she was able to mow through an army of samurai and had the hockey-infused attack, piercing through Kaido's castle with burn marks throughout the whole area. If Luffy was not able to dodge this, we'd probably have a lower episode count. But Big Mom is not the only big name with a move of that big impact. Our next entry actually hit Luffy too. If there's anyone in the One Piece world that gave Luffy the fight of his life, most people would likely point to Kaido. I mean, they'd have different answers, but Kaido is like the undisputed boss when it comes to Luffy's haters. Before the raid on Onigashima, Kaido had already beaten Luffy with one shot, with a single Thunder Bagua straight to Gear 4 Luffy's face. That alone was able to keep Luffy out of the picture for most of the early episodes of Wano. If that wasn't enough, during the raid, Kaido sent Luffy flying again. Of course, before the fight reached its climax, Kaido even managed to go toe-to-toe with Gear 5 and hit him with his signature move, Conqueror of 3 Worlds Ragnaraku. It took a miracle for Luffy to slip through Kaido's defenses here, but the mere thought of Kaido swinging a kanabo his size at the speed he's going at, you really gotta question the kind of willpower Luffy has to be taking beating after beating from that. But if you thought one move was powerful, how about 2? Our next entry is a tag team move that probably would have set out to do what it's called. Taking an attack from Kaido is bad enough, but taking it from Big Mom as well at the same time? Well, that's just what Zoro did, and he was out of commission immediately after, despite blocking it. Hakai, or the rightfully called Conquest of the Sea, is a team move that combines the haki of 2 emperors swinging and concentrating their haki to shoot out a concentrated blast of pure energy. Considering Zoro only temporarily blocked the attack by expending all of his haki to do so, he was not only able to deflect it, but he was also able to survive. Knowing how much medical attention Zoro needed just after that block, and shows you how strong that attack was without it even making direct contact. The Supernovas had the good fortune of being able to eventually separate the 2 emperors, but if the fight continued there, we'd likely be seeing a different ending to One Piece. Of course, they're not the only emperors who can fight and deal significant damage. Our next entry shows you that even the simplest moves can be very effective. We talked about Odin earlier when he decided to greet Whitebeard the way he did, but we didn't talk about how that fight ended. Whitebeard isn't exactly the fanciest fighter in the world. Whatever works, works for him. And to stop Odin from being annoying, Whitebeard just punches him. Yeah, on this whole list of all these big dudes with crazy names, Conquest of the Sea, Ragnaraku, Ikoku Sovereignty, Whitebeard just punches people. I mean, of course it's infused with this Quake fruit, but like still, it's not a named attack. It doesn't matter. He's just that broken. This brings us to our next entry, also involving Odin. When the Whitebeard pirates settled down on an island where the Roger pirates were, Odin, being who he is, decided to introduce himself to Roger as well. Roger, not being a pushover, ended the fight immediately with his signature move, Divine Departure. You can tell that Roger wasn't trying to kill Odin, but the mere fact that one move was all it took to send this dude flying. I mean, heck, if you want more proof of the move's power, Shanks decimated the Kid Pirates with just that. Of course, our next entry is probably the only person in the Marines who could match Roger's mastery of hockey. Garp's frequent use of armament hockey was shown even in the earlier episodes, where he was the only one who could smack Luffy around as a kid. Up until Egghead Island, most information surrounding Garp's fighting abilities has only been really described by word of mouth. I mean, after all, you're talking about a man that's repeatedly denied the role of Admiral and that's fighting without a Devil Fruit ability. But during the events of Egghead Island, we finally get to see him fight, and with a single punch, he managed to level Hachinosu with his signature move, Galaxy Impact. And that's not even mentioning the style points he gets by punching the air around his back to propel himself on top of the island. People have been saying that Garp is strong, but like actually seeing that his punches are comparable to nukes, the dude probably would have been able to stop Ace's execution on his own if he wanted to. I swear, old people in One Piece are insanely powerful, man. Most punches in One Piece are pretty good, with both Garp and Whitebeard fighting for the top spots, but our next entry doesn't use hands at all. Sanji is one of the monster trio in the Straw Hats, and as a result, he's likely to be one of the first in a battle when it comes to serious fights. In the Onigashima raid, he managed to awaken his latent scientific enhancements, and in his fight with Queen, it was evident that the now blue flames would be enough to take down the high-ranking beast pirate officer. His signature move, Ifrit Jambe, happened because of his strong desire to protect his friends, and considering he's been upping his kicking game throughout the whole series, this might just be another move that gets upgraded the further we go. But of course, you can't talk about Sanji's signature move without having the Zoro fans come at you. Without much the Straw Hats up their game in Wano, Zoro had a hand in ending the raid too, with him being the second person ever to wound Kaido. Zoro's Asura Blades Drawn calls upon a technique that manifests itself with him having 9 arms and 3 faces. Even Kaido's beast form wasn't enough to protect him from Enma the second time around. But I mean, hey, if we're talking about the raid, there's just one more move that stands out from everything else. Being the move that ended the raid, it's only appropriate that our boy Luffy ends up knocking out Kaido for good with his Gear 5 move, the Bajrang Gun. With this, he managed to take down Kaido once and for all with a gigantic hockey-infused fist. Luffy's hand-to-hand game has gotten better through the years, from the Gum Gum pistol, the Gum Gum Gatling, even to Gear 4's Gum Gum Kong gun. But nothing beats the sheer hype and impact of the Bajrang Gun, signaling the end of the conflict and Kaido acknowledging Luffy as Joy Boy in his final moments. Before we get into the last and greatest one-hit KO, make sure you subscribe and comment KO if you made it to the end. And lastly, Shanks' Divine Departure. Shanks used this move on Captain Kid when Kid tried invading Elbaf, and obviously with Shanks being there, he just wasn't gonna pull it off. And so Shanks grabbed his sword and just KO'd Kid like it was nothing. Rest in one piece, Captain Kid. I'll let myself add. Click on this video if you don't want to end up as Kid.